All right, I'll go ahead and get started. So I'm going to start recording. Um, Thank you all for joining. This is going to be the first edition of our Arc server community call. And so the goal here is we have a general Arc community call where we talk about all of the exciting product updates across Kubernetes, our managed service offerings, as well as server. This is a really server-centric one where we're going to be diving into features, capabilities, agent updates across server, some of the VMware capabilities, as well as SQL Server as well. And so the goal here is really providing forum and opportunity to provide feedback, specific question answers, and then really doing a lot of demos and getting hands-on with a lot of our server capabilities in action, and also providing that channel where you guys can give us some feedback and sign up for all of our different preview opportunities. So we want to make sure you guys are all aware of all of the development work happening on the server side and are able to share your feedback about what your pain points are. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started. And thank you all again for taking the time out to join. And so for today, we're going to have a pretty packed agenda. I'm going to start off with some announcements and updates. We're going to keep the housekeeping really light, just about sort of what's new with the different agents and key takeaways. Then I'm going to have Danny, who's going to share SSH ARC capabilities. He's going to demo that one generally available in July, and he's going to show some really neat use cases with that. We're going to have Ved and Raghu showcase run command, which is currently in preview. And so you're going to be able to see run command in preview action, as well as information on how you can sign up for private preview for that. And then we're going to have Jalen share the latest with Arc Gateway, which is the area of active development where we're looking for feedback and private preview information as well there. And finally, we're going to close off with a little sneak peek of extended security updates, our demo for that. And again, that's going to be made available mid-September. So really soon, you're going to be able to enroll your Arc-enabled servers and ESUs directly from Azure portal. Again, that was announced during Microsoft Inspire. So we're really looking forward to that and want to showcase what we have in a preview state in our portal. So that's the agenda for today. And after that, we're going to go in and use the rest of the time for Q&A. So we want to keep it really light and just focus on core capabilities here. All right. So first, wanted to highlight some of the updates from our latest agent. So we had the Connected Machine Agent 1.33. We had some fixes around a security vulnerability with the Arc Server agent. We also have the new ability to set the agent mode before connecting the agent to Azure. So if you're not aware, you're able to lock down the Azure Arc Server agent, specifying specific extensions, whether you want to enable or disable guest management. So think, enterprise, you want to lock down the capabilities of the Arc Server agent. You have the flexibility to do that with our security controls. And again, this is documented in our security overview for Arc Server. And the final piece is we wanted to highlight the agent now responds to IMDS, even when the connection to Azure is temporarily unavailable. So this is part of a lot of ongoing investment to make sure that we're working well even in disconnected scenarios. These are some of the key highlights from our latest agent release 1.33. 1.34 for September is on its way, and that's going to actually support ESUs. One other neat thing with 1.33 is this actually natively supports the run command capabilities you guys are going to see in preview with Raghu and Vade just shortly. Next, wanted to highlight some of the quick updates from the SQL Server side. Arc SQL Server, their extension release, now that supports automatic rotation of certificates for Microsoft Entra ID authentication. And again, that's Azure AD renamed under Microsoft Entra. And we have the new ability to configure patching of Arc-enabled SQL servers directly from Azure portal. So we got a lot of requests for this on the SQL Server side around the patching capabilities of Arc-enabled SQL Server. And so now that's natively available from the UX. And again, if you have an Arc-enabled server and deploy our SQL Server extension, all of those SQL Server instances inventoried get onboarded to Azure Arc as SQL Server instances that you can then leverage all of those good capabilities like best practice assessment, ESUs, for example, Defender for SQL on. So a lot of cool capabilities there for SQL Server supported on Arc with a lot of investment there. And the final piece is this was announced at VMware Explore. we now have a public preview refresh for Arc-enabled VMware vSphere. So you're thinking, okay, what does that mean? That means that you can start using Arc-enabled VMware vSphere and connecting at a vCenter level to onboard all of the VMs discovered there at scale. And you get the lifecycle management capabilities where you can provision VMs, delete, resize, etc. But you also get, by default, all of the guest management capabilities available for Arc Server. So you get the best of both worlds with this refresh. Again, Arc-enabled VMware vSphere is in public preview, but now you get that at scale VMware integration with the ability to leverage all of the good Azure management capabilities natively available for Arc Server because of the consolidation in terms of the agentry there. So those are the highlights of three of the major updates we have. I also shared in the newsletter we are doing a multi-cloud at scale onboarding. So if you're interested in that, we are doing a private preview for that. We're able to onboard from your AWS management accounts at scale as well. So lots of exciting developments happening and a lot of updates there. With that, I'm going to pause in terms of our agent update highlights and sort of our public preview refresh announcements here. And we're going to get right into the demos. So we know this is what everyone's joined here for. So I'm going to hand it over to Danny. And Danny is going to be able to share with you the latest and greatest with SSH Arc. So take it away, Danny.
Hey folks, apologies for not doing camera if I sound a little funny. I'm a little under the weather, so you'll have to bear with me. So SSH for Arc-enabled servers. We also like to call it Shark sometimes, just their SSH Arc. But really what this is about is being able to access your servers, whether they're Linux or Windows machines, once they're onboarded into Arc without a public IP address. So again, we're just communicating through the same Arc channel with outbound communication. And so it's really about kind of improving your security posture when trying to connect to these machines, or just to connect to them remotely in a more, I'd say, familiar way for, I'd say, IT admins. And so here I just have a local, say, PowerShell session open. I've already done like an AZ login with Azure CLI. We have Azure CLI as well as Azure PowerShell. But what we can do is, and I'll pull this over here as well, just for visibility. We've got two Arc servers, one called Ubuntu 22 and one called Windows 22. And what we can do is we can come here to Azure CLI, say AZ SSH Arc. We'll specify my resource group as Arc servers, which is my resource group, the name of my machine. And what we can do is then we can say a local user Danny. Actually, that whole thing is what I want. And so here I'm connecting to my Ubuntu machine as a local user, and I'm supplying an already existing SSH key file for authentication. So I can just execute this command. And so what we're doing here is we have, I'd say, an SSH proxy, so essentially an SSH wrapper around the Arc agent, I'd say, on the server side. And so we have a connect agent there, which is already kind of part of the overall Arc agent. And we also have an SSH proxy on the client, which is part of the Azure CLI extension or the Azure PowerShell module. And so by doing that, we can create this SSH connection to your Arc server that doesn't have a public IP address and have I'd say, a full-fledged SSH connection. And so here you can see I authenticated with my my SSH keys for a Linux machine. That also works if I want to connect back to my Windows machine. So we'll change this here to Windows, my local user Danny, and I'll get prompted for a password here since I don't have a key set up on my Windows machine. And so here I can also do my password to log in, which is awesome. Something that's also really cool, if y'all are familiar with the AZ SSH commands for Azure machines, we also support Entra ID login. And so instead of logging in as a local user, Danny in this case, I'm just going to remove local user altogether. And now it's going to say, hey, I'm already logged in as, let's just say, Danny@Microsoft.com. Let's connect to that machine as Danny@Microsoft.com. And so I no longer have to manage keys. I have to manage passwords, anything like that. It's all done based on a role assignment that I already have assigned in Azure. And so you can see here, I'm connected to that same machine, but just as, let's just say, Danny@Microsoft.com. And so it really makes, I'd say, managing that access control component a lot easier if I can just do it based on my Entra ID and assigned role assignments. Right now, this just is for Linux. We are actively working on that same feature for Windows. But on the Windows side, and sorry, I'm going a little fast here because I'm tight on time, but I just want to show all the kind of cool things we have. So a lot of folks will say, well, for Windows, I use RDP. And do you have an RDP solution here? I'd say, no, we don't have, I say, a full quote unquote RDP solution here. We're actually trying to move folks away from, I'd say, RDP and GUI scenarios for, I'd say, server workloads into more, I'd say, auditable, I'd say, command line based approach for server workloads. And so, but if you do need kind of that break glass scenario, we have an RDP parameter. And so if I execute this command, what it's going to do is it's not, I'd say, opening RDP ports on that server. It's using an SSH tunnel to create an RDP connection. And so what we're saying is saying, hey, SSH, create a tunnel from a local host port on my machine to the remote server, and then allow me to connect. And so you saw me off here, put my password in. That was authenticating to my SSH connection. Here I'm also going to SSH or authenticate to my RDP session. And you can see here I am getting an RDP session to that server. And this is all, again, without a public IP address. And so personally, I have this all set up on my I say, personal computer desktop that I just have just sitting on my desk at home. And so if I ever need to connect, I can just say AZSSH ARC and supply whatever resource group and whatever I called it for the VM name, and I can connect to that machine. And so it's a really, I'd say, extensible model. And so if y'all are familiar with SSH, SSH is used for a lot of, I'd say, other tooling besides just SSH, whether that be SFTP, SCP, or other, I'd say, third-party solutions like Ansible, are all leverage SSH. And so what we can do is we have, I'd say, these same machines. What we can do is change this namespace, or this command name, to say config, supply the resource group, the name of the machine, local user again, resource type. And right now I'm going to produce a config file. So I changed the command to be, instead of AZSSH ARC, I changed it to be AZSSH config. I supply a file path for where I want it to write my SSH config file. And so if you're not familiar with an SSH config file, it's essentially like your client settings file, right? And so here I'm saying, if I want to connect to, when I'm connecting to this specific host, which will be, it gets saved as, here, let's do this, SFTP. I'll pass it the file that I just created. And then when I'm connecting to this host, which is the resource group, the VM name the user. And when I say, hey, I want to connect, it's going to say, okay, I'll look at the specific settings for this host and I'll connect. And this is still going through, I'd say, kind of the private connection we have through the Arc agent. And so again, there's no public IPs associated with this machine. And so now you can see I'm on just with SFTP. And I'd say the kind of the last kind of cool thing here is like, oh, this is all great. What if I can't remember all these details? So here in the portal, if I just click on a machine, there's now this little connect button here. And so if you click connect, you get prompted, hey, this is what you can use to connect. Or you can also connect in browser. And so I'm going to just click this connect in browser. If you have Cloud Shell set up, it will just go right away. If you don't, you might have to set up Cloud Shell. I know Cloud Shell is working on, I'd say, making the streamlining the first time experience as well. But if you click open in browser, and then it will automatically inject that command. So once I click to the blue button, I didn't push anything, and now I'm on my machine. And so the reason I didn't have to authenticate here is because I used Microsoft Entra ID. But if I go back and let's just say I'm even using the Windows machine, let's exit out of this one machine. And I say connect, and this is my Windows machine. Again, Entra ID is coming soon. We'll say password. I'll supply my my username. We'll say connect, and Cloud Shell saying, hey, we don't want to take over anything and make you lose something. So we say yes. And again, I have not clicked anything since that yes, put in my password, and now I'm on that machine. And so again, what this is really allowing you to do is to get these, I'd say, quick and easy connections that are still secure, where you don't have, I'd say, a public IP address, and it should work with any of your existing scripts or functionalities if you export the SSH config for any of your existing automations. So I'll stick around and answer any questions in the chat if any have come up. Thanks, folks.
Awesome. Thanks, Danny. I think we do have a question here around, does this work for Arc-enabled servers in AWS as well?
Yes. So this, I say this does not discriminate against, I'd say, where your hardware lives. And so if you have a machine in AWS and you want to have a private IP, and I'm not familiar with, I'd say, AWS's private IP offering, but if that's painful to set up and it's already onboarded as an Arc machine, just go and run this command. It should work. For enabling this functionality, you have to be like a contributor or an owner of the resource. And if you look in our documentation, which I can throw in the chat, it tells you how to do that. Or if you're already an administrator or an owner or a contributor on that resource, then if you try to connect for your first experience, we'll tell you, hey, you don't have this set up. Would you like us to do it for you? And it will just take a little bit longer, but we'll go and set up the machine to allow the SSH connectivity. So this isn't on by default for any of these machines at this point, but it's certainly easy to set up if you want to enable it for the users.
Awesome. Just kind of going through the chat, I think there's a question about what the minimum IAM role is. So this was the contributor role, correct?
Yeah, so here, if I'm on this machine to enable it, so in order to use it, you need as a contributor. I also showed kind of the AAD login. And so there exist these other roles called virtual machine administrator login. There's also a virtual machine, I think, user login, and there's a virtual machine local user login. And so all of those, I just kind of have blanket assigned since this is my demo subscription, but you can granularity just again as you would with any other, I'd say, role assignment, assign it per resource.
Awesome. I think the other question, one is, do we have any documentation about the networking requirements in terms of the firewall ports that are required, whitelisting for specific to SSH Arc? Are there anything unique for that?
Nope, there's nothing unique. So it's just anything that you do for your overall, I'd say, Arc agent and onboarding. That's, I'd say, remains the same. We have a configuration setting on each server on whether SSH is allowed or not, and that's what that enablement that I talked about would change. But there's no other specific allow listing that you need to do.
Awesome. And one last question is, there's a question about automatically terminating a session after a period of time outside of setting a timeout on the host directly. Is that some capability that's already available or on the roadmap?
Yeah, so I'd say the nice thing about I thought I heard someone else to come in.
That's good.
Okay, so the nice thing about kind of what we have here is anything that you set for SSH, it might just be like an SSH option. So let's just go here. If I want to supply some other SSH, I'd say parameter, right? I can just say like a double dash, and let's just say I could say -o, and then provide whatever other SSH option. So any SSH parameter that you want to supply, you can. It's still supported here. It's just kind of hidden a little bit because obviously we can't provide a parameter for every single SSH option. For the specifically for timeouts, that'd be something you need to set on the host. But we're still using all the same SSH, I'd say, capabilities. So even if you connected from a machine that did have line of sight where you didn't need to go through kind of the Arc SSH connectivity, it'd still be using the exact same SSH and SSH deconfig settings. So even if you already have it set up, this should honor that.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Danny, for showcasing this. I think those are the main questions we got. And again, SSH Arc is generally available, right, Danny? So anyone can use this today, right?
Yeah, this is generally available. We've been available for a few months. I'd say go and try it. We've already got some folks. I'd say we've already got some automation on it. We've already got a lot of active usage. So go ahead and try it out and let us know if you have any feedback or feature requests.
Awesome. And who do they
A quick
contact if they have
question.
feature requests? Yep.
Oh yeah, question first.
Really quickly, are there any IDP restrictions? I'm sure it works with Azure MFA, but are there any Okta or Duo or anything like that? There are some requirements that some government DoD contractors might need to support.
Yeah, so for things like, so this is around like MFA, yeah? Is that correct? You
Yeah,
kind of cut out
yeah,
on my
sure.
side, so I just want to make sure I understood the question correctly.
Yes,
So
perfect.
yeah, so
Two-factor
for any
authentication.
so for any MFA, I would honestly recommend using the Entra ID login because any two-factor you have set up with, I'd say, logging into Azure will get honored for that because they're going to have to go through that same, I'd say, two-factor login to when they say like the AZ login to connect. They're going to be forced into that same, I'd say, two-factor experience. The SSH itself, which is what we're using whenever we used, I'd say, the local user logins, though there is some, I'd say, two-factor support, I'd say, for Linux machines, and you could use a YubiKey for your SSH key and things like that. But it's a little more of a process to set up. We've also are evaluating how we can, I say, streamline that a little bit better. How can we integrate that with like the Microsoft Authenticator app? But those are all kind of things that are further down the line. If you want something right now where it's got, I'd say, already built to 2FA, then I'd say use the Entra ID login because it's built in with all of the Azure login MFA.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, so if you want to reach out to me, I can say, I don't know if I can throw my email out in the chat if people want to do that, and I'll kind of post a block that has some links to documentation and my email. So feel free to reach out. I'm happy to chat individually, and if you have issues or if you have feedback, so let me know.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Danny. Really appreciate it. And didn't seem under the weather at all. So it was a great demo and really excited.
Great.
Hope you get well soon. All right. Next, want to pull up Raghu and Ved, who are excited to share some additional capabilities on Run Command, which is right now in private preview. So they're going to be giving you a sneak peek of that, as well as directions on how you can get access to the private preview. So Raghu and Ved, you want to come on and share?
Yes, hi. Yeah, Ved. I think Ved will be doing the demo.
Yeah, hi. Let me share my screen. You guys see my screen?
Yeah, we have your screen.
Yeah, thank you. So I have onboarded my machine to Arc, and I'm running a special version of the ACCLI, which you will receive if you sign up for the private preview. And so it comes with the special run command command. So right now you can see we have no commands. So let's get started with what run command is. So run command for Azure Arc is very similar to what run command for Azure Compute is. It's managed run commands essentially. So you can run multiple scripts in parallel or sequential. We can run scripts that have longer timeouts. So let's say they go for like 8 hours. You can set a special flag that lets you run them for those 8 hours without being timed out by Azure. So you can use this for stuff like logging, and then you also have capabilities that let you upload these scripts to a blob, which is an append blob. And so let's say you want to do logging or stuff like that, you can keep on going without being stopped by Azure. So let's start with like a very simple script. So it's a very simple script. It just writes to a host. So when these scripts are run, they are run as a root or sudo or system user on Windows and sudo or root user on Linux. And they're run in PowerShell and Bash on these systems. And so we can see the output. The script gets run, and you can see in the instance view the output here. The script takes usually less than a second to run. If it's a longer running script, it'll take longer. And so we have different streams for different outputs. So this is for the output is sent to the output stream and the error is sent to the error stream. This is so when you have so these are limited to 4 KB. And so if you have longer messages, you can stream these to blobs. So let's say this is just an error, and if you were to write this, so it's still running. It'll show up as creating as a provisioning state. Yeah, then you can see the execution state failed because it was an error, and then it'll show you what the error was and where it went wrong. So you also have capabilities to time out a script. And so let's say I have a long running script. So let's in this example, it sleeps for 4 seconds, but I have a timeout that's set to 3 seconds. And so this is good for when you expect there to be like if you expect the script to time out, but you don't want it to keep executing. And so this will run. So we're also working on improving the CLI experience. So it'll be a lot quicker now. That's why I've been doing the no wait commands here. It's because the operation status takes a little bit longer than the actual script execution.
This is awesome, Ved. And just this is a question in the chat. This works for Windows and Linux, right?
Yes, correct.
Yep.
And so on Windows, it'll use PowerShell, and on Linux, it'll use Bash. You can also, I think you're able, if you provide a script file, you can do something where you choose if it's PowerShell on Linux too, I think. Yeah, so you can also run, if it's a file, for example, you can append like a hash Python and then it'll run it in Python, I think. Sorry, this is taking a little bit longer.
Nice. And this capability is available for no additional cost, right? This is a free capability offered for Arc
Yes,
servers. Yep.
yes. And so this is also its own resource type, and it'll show up in the portal along with extensions played as a run command. And so it also supports tags. These can be tagged. This is taking too long. This is okay. So the script execution completed, but it got timed out. So because we waited for 4 seconds, and so it didn't print anything. So we'll still have support for uploading to blobs with managed identity and SAS tokens. And then there's also an async execution flag, which it's harder to show, but what this will essentially do is it'll mark the script as done. as soon as it gets run on the machine. And so ARM will time the script out if it's been longer than 4 hours. And so this is a way to circumvent that by for longer scripts longer than 4 hours.
And while that's running, I know we have a question from Jeremy in the chat. How does this interact with SCOM? And this is a common question with System Center SCCM. So the Arc agent does not interfere with local monitoring with SCOM or with SCCM. In fact, most of our customers are using a blend of SCCM and Azure management. So we really see them as better together. Great question.
Yeah, I mean the flag is set to 2, but you would have to wait for more than 4 hours to see if it actually works. So I think that's it for the demo. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, and also if we could share, so currently this is in private preview, and if we could share steps on how folks can access the capability and try out the preview.
Yeah, I think Arnav can help on that. I think there's a sign up list somewhere.
Yep, absolutely. So we put in the chat and I'll put it in again. We have a link to aka.ms arc run command private preview. So I've shared this in the chat and I'll put it in again. So you can go ahead and start and you'll basically enter your name, role, company, etc., email. And what we'll do is we'll give you the step-by-step directions. You need the latest agent version. We'll give you access to the CLI as well that's needed. And finally, you'll provide us with your subscription IDs, and then you'll be able to test around run command on your Arc-enabled servers again. So we're doing a private preview now, and we're really eager to get customer feedback on specific use cases you're interested in, what type of scripts you're interested in for our gallery view, etc. So we're really looking forward to that. Does anyone have any questions about run command? All right. If not, thank you again, Raghu and Ved, and we're looking forward to folks joining our preview. Thanks.
Thank you.
So with that, I'll invite over Jalen, who's going to talk a little bit about Arc Gateway. So you're going to get the latest. We know that networking is a key pain point, and so Jalen's been working really hard on this gateway solution that we've been driving. So take it away, Jalen.
Cool. Thanks so much, Arnav. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you all virtually. And like Arnav mentioned, one of the things that is my top priority right now is the Arc Gateway. We know that allowing lots of endpoints in your firewall or enterprise proxy is a challenging experience. So that's what we are aiming for the gateway to address. And I'll share my screen for just a bit of context. It's just one slide. But essentially, we know Arc requires lots of URLs. The core Arc-enabled server scenario requires the allowance of 15 URLs in your firewall or proxy. And then as you add additional experiences, more endpoints are required to use those as well. So the purpose of the gateway overall is to reduce the number of URLs that are required to use Arc and Arc additional experiences. Our goal is to reduce all of those to one endpoint. So in order to use Arc, you can allow a single endpoint in your firewall or proxy, and then make use of Arc and all Arc scenarios is our long-term goal. So today we are in private preview, specifically for Arc servers. And we're actively looking for participants. You can sign up using the AKA link that's there, aka.ms/Arc Gateway. And I'll talk a bit about the private preview experience. So how we recommend, the recommendations that we're giving for the private preview experience are for customers to start with a test environment, not a development environment. And essentially a locked down test environment. and one that does not allow any outbound access except for the Arc Gateway URL that's provided in the documentation that you'll get after you sign up to participate. And then after you have your test environment, after you have a non-Arc enabled server in your test environment, and you have that environment locked down to all URLs except for the Arc Gateway URLs, then we have a script that's part of the instructions. That's it's similar in nature to the script that you use today to Arc onboard a server. So you essentially take the script that we provide. We have one for Linux and one for Windows. You take the script, you put in a few of your details like resource group, tenant ID, so on and so forth. And then you run the script, and the server will be Arc enabled with only access to the Arc Gateway URL. And in the private preview, we do have a couple other URLs, I think 4 more, depending on if you wanted to try out the monitoring or update management scenarios. So there are, they will be included, they are included in the documentation. Once you sign up, you'll receive that. But that's the general experience. You start with a non-Arc enabled server in a lockdown environment. You use the script that we provide, and it onboards the server with only that communication with that single endpoint. So we're really eager to get private preview feedback. We're really eager to learn from customers how the private preview works for them, how it fits within their existing environment, and then what other functionalities or features need to be added. So if you're interested, feel free to fill out the form. And I see some questions in the chat. Today, with the private preview, the Arc Gateway does not support private endpoints. So the private preview are for the non-private link supported traffic. So traffic that would traditionally go through your proxy or firewall, that traffic would go through the Arc Gateway. And looking at some other questions we have here, will any public URLs be needed? Oh, yes, public URLs will be needed for the private preview. But for those who are seeking the private URLs or private endpoints, please also fill out the form, because that's a scenario that we've heard a lot about. And we're in design now with figuring out how that should work technically. So if you are interested even in the private endpoint scenario only, please also fill out the form, and we can chat more about your scenario there so that we can make sure that the design that we make for the private endpoint scenario fulfills your needs. Let's see. So Arc Gateway is for those customers with public IP connectivity that want to use Arc, correct? Oh, very similar question. So yeah, the private preview today uses public IPs. So for those customers who have ExpressRoute or VPN tunnels, there are still some endpoints that do not support private links. So there are some endpoints that will not go over ExpressRoute just because that service doesn't yet support private link. And in those instances where the traffic would traditionally go to public endpoints, then the gateway would come into play. And I see also the aka.ms URL, which is required. That is also covered by the Arc Gateway. So the aka.ms URL would be covered by the gateway URL that you would allow. And then reduced URLs, they go right. So they will not be wildcard. The long-term goal for the gateway is for there to be a single non-wildcard URL. For the private preview, if you'd like to try out update management scenario, you'll see in the documentation that there are some wildcard URLs for that specific scenario. But long-term, our vision is for there to be a single URL that is not a wildcard that you can allow in your environment. I'll continue to stay on and answer questions in the chat. Thank you all so much for listening. And Arnav, I'll pass it back to you.
Yep. And Jalen,
Yes.
you can see with all these questions, we're obviously super excited to try this out. How do we join the preview here?
Absolutely. So if you go to aka.ms/arc gateway, then there will be a form exactly the same as the form that Arnav showed for the run command private preview, where you'll enter your information, and I will be the one to get in contact with you personally, and then we will continue to engage forward from there. So feel free to go to the link aka.ms/arc gateway, and we can get started.
Awesome. Thanks so much. And this
Thank
is really neat. I think there's a bunch of networking questions we're always getting on the Arc side, and we want to make sure we're addressing all of those frictions. So this is really exciting for everyone who's done the Arc deployment. Any other questions folks have about the networking piece? I think we got one from Jeremy. With Zero Trust, is intended to tag this traffic with the same criteria as standard Azure traffic.
Interesting. Okay. With zero trust and always on, is intended to tag this traffic with the same criteria. That's a good question, Jeremy. I'd like to chat more about your context, the context around your question. So if I'll put my email in the chat once again, and I think we should chat more about what you mean there. Let's see. I'll put my email here.
Sure. I mean, you guys understand that a lot of companies are going towards zero trust with conditional access policies, and from an always-on VPN perspective, what's happening is they're segregating their tunnels, and so Microsoft traffic for remote users is being siphoned off, like, so they don't have to go back through the VPN on the firewall to most businesses. So if this is intended to be a use anywhere, support your customers, especially we have a couple of use cases that might be interesting to you guys that I'd like to talk more about it offline, but
Absolutely.
we are moving towards a zero trust and an always on VPN solution. So if this is forethought to move this into the same traffic where Azure specific, 365, O365, and IaaS, all the other traffic is already put into that scenario and tagged through the multiple vendors that support zero trust and VPNs, then that might be an opportunity for you guys to streamline some of this into that traffic.
Makes sense. Yeah, it makes great sense. I think, yeah, I'm definitely interested in chatting more with you, Jeremy, about this. So please start a thread. I'd love to chat more.
Awesome.
I
And
see we
Jeff?
have a hand as well.
Yep,
Okay.
Jeff, go ahead.
Was that Jalen?
Yes, that's me.
Okay, perfect. I got your email. Thanks.
Hey, this is Jeff Woolsey. Couple of quick comments. I can see the genuine excitement going on in the chat window, and it's wonderful. It mimics pretty much every conversation I'm having with customers these days. Is like once you see it, like the light goes off, and you immediately understand the power of this. Three quick things. One, I put the networking requirements for the Azure Arc agent in the chat window, so there's a link that'll take you right there to understand any sort of firewall dependencies and what ports are being used. Two, there was a question earlier about how this works. Does this work with AWS? And I just wanted to take a quick moment to circle around and underline this very, very, very distinctly. Azure Arc is our long-term strategy to manage anything outside of Azure. Just remember, within Azure, we have, infrastructure, we have security, we have governance, we have all of these capabilities. But once you get outside of Azure, how do we want to be able to provide those similar capabilities. And that's exactly what we're doing. So yes, this works with AWS. Yes, this works with Google. Yes, this works with Oracle Cloud. Yes, this works with VMware. Yes, this works with System Center. I mean, I just want to make sure everybody understands the totality of not only the vision, but what's already in place. And then finally, just last thing is just your feedback. I can't thank you guys enough. If you look at these cool features that you're seeing today demoed, some of these ideas came from you. Some of these came from customers. So please, if you have additional input, or if please join the previews and give us additional feedback, because that is helping drive this forward. All right, thank you much.
Right on, Jeff. Those are great points. And yeah, to reiterate, everything you're seeing is Windows and Linux. It's across AWS, GCP, on-prem, all the different environments, Stack HCI, all the different environments, VMware. And again, we really want your preview feedback, and we want honest feedback too. So if it's a problem, we'd love to learn. The final thing I wanted to end with before we switch to Q&A is I wanted to show you just a little sneak preview of the ESU offer in Azure Portal, and this is going to go available very soon over the next weeks. But here you're going to see what the experience is going to look like. So here I'm going to go ahead and I've gone to Azure Arc, and we're going to have extended security update view here. And what I'm going to open up here is a ESU specific subscription. Here we go. And what you're going to have is the ability to actually provision extended security update licenses. Again, this is for Windows Server 2012, which is going end of support in October. You want critical security patches for extra few years, for up to 3 years. You're able to enroll in those directly from Azure. And so you'll be able to go to Azure Portal and you'll be able to provision your own extended security update licenses that are going to get charged there. You're going to be able to activate specified data center or standard, the number of physical cores associated with that license, and you're going to be able to provision those licenses directly from Azure for your Arc-enabled servers. And so it's as simple as you provision a license, right? And here we have physical core, virtual core-based standard and data center licenses. And then you get visibility into all of your 2012 R2 machines that require extended security updates that don't have it already. And so you're going to see their agent health, and you're going to literally be able to point and click to select those servers that need ESUs and link them, enable ESUs on those machines, picking from your created ESU licenses. So you're literally able to point and click to enroll these servers flexibly into extended security updates directly from Azure Portal. And this is going to obviously have ARM CLI support as well to give you all of the automation you need in order to enroll at scale. But we're really excited about this offer. You know, it's a lot of financial flexibility. The cost of ESU is the same as the VL, but the big advantage here is it's monthly, pay as you go. So you can stop anytime mid-year. You're not stuck with the VL contracting. And if you have an ACD, Azure consumption discount, that applies because this is an Azure build service. So this can end up being cheaper than the VL option as well. So we're really excited about this. Again, it was announced during Inspire. You can Arc enable your servers now to prepare, and you'll be able to enroll in ESU soon. And these ESU licenses do require you having a SA, and so you will require that. And you do have the flexibility to link and delink your ESU licenses. So there's that flexibility to move from one server to another as well. And we also have a SQL Server support, and we have Windows Server support as well. So there's both of those that we have support for. And internally, we will have demo environments with subs available for folks. But I wanted to give a little sneak preview of this. And during next time session, we're going to have this generally available, so we'll be able to show this end-to-end for everyone. And ESU for SQL is in a separate page, but that's available as well. All right, any other ESU specific questions? Yep, we have this all documented as well, so I can share with you some of the documentation around this for Arc for the Windows Server 2012 side, as well as more information. And if you have dev test, you're able to enroll for free for those. Right. And yeah, will there be a session on ESU with Arc? Yeah, next time session, monthly call, will be focused on a lot of ESU deep dive demos. So this is still in preview state in our portal. So next time it'll be generally available and we'll be able to answer a lot of questions in depth about this. All right. Any other questions? Cool. And if you want to sign up for distribution for these calls, we'll be announcing, it's just through the newsletter. We send the invite in. We don't put it on everyone's calendar because we know everyone's busy. But if you want invite, you can let us know. And in terms of Arc server, we do support resource group moves. That's correct. Awesome. Any other questions? If not, happy to give folks some time back and thank you all for taking time out of your morning to join. It was an absolute pleasure. And thanks again, Jalen, Danny, Raghu, Vid, everyone, Jeff, for sharing. I really appreciate it, folks. Awesome. Thanks. Bye.